Hello, and welcome to The Critique. We're analyzing a draft submission on the volatile conflict between hostage coordinator Gal Hirsch and Einav Zangauker, covering death threats, assault allegations, and the politicization of the hostage crisis. So let's get right into the feedback.
Let's do it.
The material currently presents the conflict as a series of personal insults, but it needs to elevate the discussion to the systemic tension between state bureaucracy and individual trauma.
Yes, that's the core of it.
Because right now, the draft is just getting bogged down. It's spending so much real estate on the specific words of the fight. You know, quote after quote of Einav calling Hirsch a floor rag, or Hirsch claiming he was called a murderer.
Right, the he said, she said.
Exact. And it starts to feel like you're just reading a transcript of a shouting match, not an analysis of one.
It really does. It feels like tabloid gossip. And look, I get it. The quotes are juicy. Floor rag it's a visceral insult. But by focusing so much on the what, the insults themselves, the writer is completely missing the why.
Which is what the reader is here for. They know the gossip. They want to understand the structural breakdown. The weakness here, I think, is a lens issue. It's about significance and relevance.
Totally. This isn't just two people who don't like each other. This is a collision.
So the suggestion has to be to zoom out, frame this personal animosity as a symptom of that larger structural failure.
And I think there's a key word in the source material that unlocks the whole thing. The word is immunity. Hirsch has this fascinating line where he says something like, I understood the pain, I absorbed everything, but this immunity cannot last forever.
Oh, that's a great hook.
That's everything, isn't it? The writer needs to grab onto that word. For months, Einav Zangauker had this shield. Her son was a hostage. That gave her immunity, protecting her from criticism, from legal consequences.
So she could scream, she could threaten, she could sleep in his office, as the draft says.
And Hirsch, as the state, had to just take it. He had to absorb it. But the draft misses the crucial moment that shield drops. It just treats the lawsuit in February 2026 as, Hirsch got mad.
When it was so much more than that.
It was a signal. The state decided the immunity had expired. So the piece needs to ask explicitly, does a mother's right to rage have an expiration date?
That elevates the stakes immediately. So a concrete example would, instead of just saying Hirsch sued Zonker, you write something like, the lawsuit wasn't just retaliation. It was a declaration that the state's tolerance for individual trauma had reached its limit.
Yes, that's the story. And the evidence is right there. Juxtapose the two images. Early on, Hirsch says Einav slept in his office, and he helped her. Then, later on Channel 14, he's claiming she physically attacked an officer.
That trajectory is the narrative arc.
It is. From I will help you to I will sue you. That's the tragedy of broken trust, not just a petty fight.
Okay, let's move on. The section detailing Hirsch's claim that protests aided Hamas requires a more critical, multifaceted analysis to be persuasive.
This section is, it's really tricky. Right now, the writer is basically just repeating Hirsch's assertion as fact.
Yeah, it takes his interview on the Patriots and just sort of transcribes it. He says Hamas took copywriting created here in Israel like time is running out. And the draft just puts that on the page and moves on.
Which is dangerous. It almost implies the writer accepts that the protesters were, unindicted co-conspirators or something.
Exact. The weakness here is a lack of scrutiny. It's an issue of angle and originality. We're only getting Hirsch's angle.
And I'm not saying the writer has to call him a liar, but you have to apply some skepticism. It's a fact Hamas used the slogans, we all saw the videos, but does correlation equal causation?
That's the question the piece needs to ask.
That's the essential question. Is it collaboration, as Hirsch implies, or is it just standard psychological warfare? Of course your enemy is going to use your own pain against you.
So the suggestion is to challenge the text, to ask a better question. Don't just quote Hirsch. Analyze the implications of his accusation.
Let's use a concrete example. The hourglass visual. Hirsch says it was created in Israel, then stolen by Hamas. The writer needs to analyze that blurring of lines. It creates this horrific hall of mirrors for the families.
Can you unpack that?
Well, a family member screams, time is running out of sheer terror. Then Sinwar releases a video saying, time is running out to terrorize them more. And then the hostage coordinator turns around and blames the family for giving Sinwar the idea.
It's a brutal cycle, and the draft flattens it.
Completely. And where's the counterweight? The source notes have quotes from other families, from Sharon Calderon, from Karmit Pelticatsir. They're arguing the exact opposite. Calderon's point is that silence is what equals death.
So the writer needs to put those arguments right next to each other.
In the same paragraph, friction creates heat. You have to write something like, well, Hirsch argued the protests armed Hamas with propaganda. Families like the Calderons argued that silence was the true weapon of the enemy. You have to show that tension.
Right. The truth is in the conflict between those two realities, which, that bleeds right into our next point. The source material relies heavily on polarized out, creating a disjointed narrative voice that needs unification.
It's giving me whiplash. One paragraph, you're reading his friendly interview on Channel 14, and Hirsch is this noble hero working through cancer, absorbing insults. The next paragraph, you're reading Twitter comments calling him a floor rag.
And the writer hasn't found their own voice. They're just channeling whoever they're quoting.
The weakness is that they're taking these sources at face value, especially Hirsch's self-portrayal. This is a tone and style critique.
Yes, he frames his inaction, like not filing a complaint about the alleged assault on the officer, as nobility.
And the draft just repeats it. Hirsch, out of nobility, did not sue. We can't do that. That's not analysis, that's PR.
So what's the suggestion?
The suggestion is to adopt a more detached, analytical tone. Always use distancing language. Never say Hirsch was noble. Say Hirsch frames his silence as nobility.
That's a small tweak, but it changes everything.
It tells the reader, I am observing this claim, not endorsing it. And do the same for the other side. The draft quotes those Strugum comments calling Einav ungrateful.
Which are awful, but they're useful data.
They're a data point. The writer should analyze them. What does it say about the public that a hostage's mother went from a national symbol to ungrateful so quickly? That's the real story there. Use those comments as a thermometer for the toxicity level.
Let's look at the leaked recordings as an example. The draft presents it as Hirsch accuses Einav of leaking.
Which is just more he said, she said. But if you strip away the bias, what is it really about?
The total breakdown of trust.
Exactly. It's not about who's the hypocrite. It's about a mother feeling she had to wear a wire into a meeting with her own prime minister. That's the analysis. The desperation that caused the leak, not the leak itself.
Okay, that brings us to the final and maybe the most structural issue. The narrative needs to better utilize the timeline of events to anchor the emotional arc.
The chronology is just mushy right now. It's all over the place. We're jumping from insults in 2024 to lawsuits in 2026 and back again. There's no sense of cause and effect.
And the writer is missing the one massive event that divides the entire timeline.
The return of Einav Zangauker.
Exactly. That is the anchor. And the draft barely even connects his return to the conflict.
But it's the catalyst for everything. The weakness is treating all these statements as if they happened at the same time. The suggestion is to structure the entire critique chronologically. You have phase 1, the crisis.
Right. Before Matan returned. Einav is sleeping in the office, Hirsch is absorbing, the immunity shield is up.
Then you have phase 2, the return. Matan comes home, the tone shifts for a moment. There's that thank you Hirsch got on the Patriot show. But very quickly,
We move to phase 3, the reckoning.
the reckoning, the lawsuits start. The moment that specific hostage is safe, the state's posture changes. The rules of engagement change. The writer has to build the piece around that pivot point.
It's the difference between behavior during the war and after the battle.
Precisely. And the source material has that quote from Daniel Roth Avenary, where he's basically saying, you got your son back, now sit down and be quiet.
That's a really harsh interpretation.
It is, but it's there in the text. And the piece has to expose that. The friction comes from Einav not sitting down. She kept fighting for the other hostages. And that seems to be what triggered the backlash. They expected gratitude and silence.
And they got continued protest.
So you can't tell this story without a clear before Matan and after Matan structure.
So if the listener goes back to the drawing board today, what's the very first thing they should do?
Build the timeline. Literally draw a line on a page. Mark the date Matan returned. And then group every single quote, every event into before or after. You'll see the narrative just emerge on its own.
And once that structure is there,
Then you layer in the analysis. You stop just repeating Hirsch's proclaims about propaganda, and you start analyzing the psychological warfare. And please, just stop calling Hirsch noble, because he said so himself.
it sounds like the writer has all the right puzzle pieces. They're just jammed together in the wrong order.
Oh, the research is solid. The quotes are there. They just need to stop being a stenographer and start being an editor. Don't just tell me what was said. Tell me what it means that it was said.
And that is the big takeaway. This isn't just about two people fighting. It's about the state's relationship with its citizens in a crisis. It's about the limits of empathy, the weaponization of grief.
And it's about the fact that even when a hostage comes home, for these families, the war isn't over. That's the emotional core the draft is missing right now.
Well, this is a very complex topic. Getting the tone right is difficult. But if the writer applies these changes, fixes the timeline, deepens the immunity analysis, balances the bias, this piece could be genuinely insightful.
It goes from being a recap to being a definitive record of the conflict. That should be the goal.
I really want to encourage the listener to take another pass. Don't be afraid to cut some of the repetitive insults to make room for this deeper analysis. Rewrite it, use that shield metaphor, structure it around Matan's return, and send it back to us. We would love to see the next version.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to The Critique. Keep writing, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.